Anybody that's union that's listening to this, you don't have to throw the house at this. You can throw $100 into Bitcoin strictly as a learning mission, just to watch what it does. We're so early in this game, and so we don't have to risk a whole lot. But to not educate yourself is a fool's game.
You don't have to convince people Bitcoin is the future, only that it is a future worth learning about. It's like the SCBA of the finance world. You know what I mean? It's your go-to self-contained breathing apparatus.
As firefighters, we're all about mitigating the risk. The asymmetry of Bitcoin, where it is the least risky asset to own, full stop.
Everyone's talking about the race to accumulate, but I say the real winners will be those that can hold on to what they have. We're here for what we're calling right now, I guess, a Bitcoin Union Hall Roundup for the Proof of Workforce YouTube channel. I got some, pretty much what we have here is the union superpower of Bitcoin in the United States, all here on this call. All firefighters, unions holding Bitcoin on the balance sheet that have utilized a Get Off Zero initiative. I'm going to try to go in order, so give me some leniency here. But the two-hitter Alex out of Vacaville with us right now. The number 3 Hank out of Humboldt Bay. Batting cleanup, Pat, who is hitting big, going yard right next to Fenway out of Taunton. And then we got Skyler out of Blackfoot, Idaho, coming in 5th. All good batting orders. Guys, I'm just happy to be with you on the call. And just like, this is really awesome. And it was great talking with you guys the other day. So I thought, let's let people see what's cooking. So if we want to go around and just very brief intros of just who you are beyond of just your background real quick, and then we can just dive into some Bitcoin talk and what's happening at the union level with Bitcoin. We'll go Alex, dude, second. Just if you want to give a little, like, let folks know, dude. They're like, who is this legend?
Well, don't mind my hair. I'm in California. I'm going full hippie. I've never grown my hair out, so I'm trying it. We'll see how it goes. Give me what do you want me to do? Just a little intro.
Yeah, just kind of like, I get, it'd be good. When'd you get into Bitcoin, and then like how long have you been with how long have you been a firefighter, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it sounds good. I have a pretty similar story to most people that have really started to see Bitcoin enough to where you can't unsee it. And my first interactions were just like how most people are today and how most people come to it. It's like, just some funny money or whatever. It was when it was, $100 each, and I kicked myself every day because I would be long retired if I would have just put the same amount of money into Bitcoin then that I did now. But at some point, I don't remember what year it was, but right around the $5,000 price point was when I really started paying attention, and I knew, mostly based on price action, but like there was something else that I just happened to be curious enough, and it might have been the Bitcoin Standard. That was the first book I read, and I think I've mowed through 14 books just about Bitcoin, let alone finance and other stuff. So ever since then, it's been just the downhill, more and more and more, because I just can't get enough. And I think that the belief that we all share, like Bitcoin is going to do already, it is, but it's going to do these incredible things for our world that people don't even understand their dollar or Bitcoin. But when you do, you start to see like, oh my God, there's some really amazing things that are going to happen for our kids, right, in this lifetime because of Bitcoin. So anyway, that's kind of my brief Bitcoin journey. We're not fully on a Bitcoin standard with my family, but we're close. And I somehow I connected, I think through another podcast. I heard you be interviewed. I'm like, oh, I got to get a hold of Dom, man. We're both firemen, both interested in Bitcoin, and here we are years later. As far as the fire service, I'm an engineer, medic, and I've been in the service one way or another for a little over 15 years. So just trying to get as many of my fellow brothers and sisters to understand what all 5 of us understand. Like, there is something really, really valuable. It's beyond just getting rich or whatever. You know what I mean?
For sure, dude. Epic, man. And I remember it feels like just yesterday going up to that restaurant where the union met. As just that was a fun time talking to everyone. And so, yeah, that was epic.
Yeah.
Hank, what's up, man? You don't seem like you're not in the workplace right now. How are you doing, dude?
I'm doing great. I'm a little sick right now, but if you can bear with me. But I spent 20 years in the fire service and just finished my last shift as long as this beard is long. So my last shift was in December and officially off the books with the fire department at the end of December 2024. So I've
Wow.
been hanging out, growing a beard, trying to figure out what's next. And part of that process has been Bitcoin. And getting to where I'm at today, I've been in diving deep down the rabbit hole since COVID. So 2020 is when I really started to get curious, and it's been 5 years. And I can pretty safely say I've listened to one podcast a day for 5 years. So
Wow.
Yeah.
that's where
That's
I'm
it's
at.
part of the routine. Hey, was your last shift? Did you get wrecked? Did you do your last tour on like a busy engine, or did you roll with like a quieter assignment?
It was pretty chill. Yeah, I was pretty lucky. My last month, I kind of curated my last 6 months. I gave a 6 month notice and had a few priorities, and stuck to those priorities and had a lot of fun. And yeah, it was good crew. I'm gonna miss the crew. I miss the people that I work with. I was brought to tears at a union meeting talking about what the union's done for me personally, and yeah, it's a big deal to try to orange pill the unions and kind of keep it going here. I'd like to help in any way I can, educate. I'm really, it's all about educating and getting people off zero, figuring it out, just kind of laying out the groundwork, getting a little stake in the game, dip the toe in, and then kind of like, oh, this isn't a Ponzi scheme. This is the opposite. So learning the fundamentals, I think, is just super important. And slowly but surely, definitely have changed a couple other people's lives that I've met and has been friends and family, and for the better by them just listening to some Bitcoin nonsense and then turning it into like I mean, I have one friend that's fully on the Bitcoin standard, literally sold the farm and house and is completely on the Bitcoin standard, and it's pretty cool to see. So
Yeah, it's always good catching up with folks that if they you just remember some of the early conversations, and then years down the road, it's amazing to see the impact. So,
yeah,
um, cool,
yeah.
man. Pat, well, Pat, dude, give us a little. You're no stranger. I know you've been on a couple of pods already, and out there real close to Boston. I know you bumped into Whitey Bulger a couple times growing up, but give us a little something on your background and where you're at.
23 years on the fire services in Taunton, Mass. I've worked as a nurse and as a paramedic for not as long, but a long time as a nurse and a paramedic, and just grinding away, many hours a week, and got tired of it. I'm tired of it. It's that my body's not healing up as fast. I'm getting a lot of nicks and bruises, and it just wears on you after a while, especially when you discover you're working for this thing called the U.S. dollar, and I'm trading in all my time, and they're just printing it away. So I can't get a fourth job. So I got into Bitcoin. Around 16 or 17, I was faced with some serious health issues, and I was thinking about long term. And I said I better get some Bitcoin long term because maybe I can't work 80 hours anymore. So that was kind of my number go up. I was jumping in for number go up. I was looking at the fast, what could get me the most amount of money in the quickest amount of time. That was back in 16 and 17. And shortly thereafter, probably around 17 or 18, started evangelizing a little bit around the firehouse. And some guys jumped on it pretty quickly, and some guys, it took them a few years. But finally, I think about 6 months ago, 8 months ago, Dom, our union voted in big numbers to move some of our funds from the union treasury into Bitcoin. So that was very exciting. And now we're talking about dollar cost averaging monthly. So that's going to pass, and self-custodying it. And I'm pretty happy because I don't know who said it earlier. you have this understanding. You can't unsee the problems of the world and with money, and you don't want to leave people behind, people that you've gone to war with or people that you've gone to fires with. These are your friends, that you spend a lot of time with, and you don't want them to just keep banging their heads against the wall and working. There's other ways, you can preserve some of that money that you made, and contract raises aren't going to do it, and your pension might not be there, so who knows what the future is going to be. I know Bitcoin will be, so that's all I've been trying to do. Talk to as many firefighters, many cops, many EMS workers, nurses as possible.
Very cool, man. Well, yeah, that was a good ride out there, and it's good to have you on board, Skyler. The latest union, the first out of Idaho, Blackfoot, dude, coming out of nowhere, just putting Idaho on its back. Just give us a little intro of you and where you're at.
Yeah, man. So I had a pretty interesting come up through, Bitcoin. Basically, it seems like everything I heard as a kid of like, oh, this industry will really take advantage of you. I ended up working in at some point, like, oh, insurance companies will take advantage of you. So I worked for State Farm for like a year and a half. And then I got into shoeing horses. I was a farrier for a long time. And trying to buy a house, and I just kept getting denied because I was self-employed, and they wanted to show more income, and they wanted to show more. I was like, yeah, but my credit score, everything's good. Like, why can't I buy a house? So I actually applied to work at a bank, and completely blown away. They hired me as a loan officer, which made no sense. But I
That's so
started to
epic.
learn like how fractional reserve banking worked and what they were doing, and I was like, this is the dumbest system ever. This makes no sense. And that was like around 2018, 2019. I got let go pretty quick, which was a smart move on their part. But started figuring out like how corrupt this system was, and I started dabbling in Bitcoin in 2019, like when it was popping off in the news, and really like right after that last halving. And then was like, I just got to do something honest that I feel good about every day. And so shoeing, I moved from California up to Idaho. I'm originally from Idaho, and shoeing up here is a totally different game. It's you're an expense to people's hobby, where I was working in California, you're more of an asset to a business. And so fire service just made sense. I just wanted to feel good about what I did. And so about 3 years ago, I got my EMT, got hired on, and started working for the fire service. And then when Bitcoin crashed down to like 16K, I was shoeing horses on the side and then fighting fire, and I was able to live on firefighting money. So I just had rat holed all my shoeing money, and I was like, this will be my down payment for my house. And then it was like, housing market just blew up. So, well, it doesn't make any sense to sit it there. So right when it was around maybe like 25, 30K, I was like, I'll just run an experiment. Like, the safe thing that the Dave Ramseys of the world tell me to do is to go stick it in a CD. And CDs are 5.25% right now, which is great, like for 6 months. And I was like, in Bitcoin's probably, it's the risky investment. So I had 10 grand. I just stuck 5 into Bitcoin and 5 into the CD. And in 6 months, I went and cried as I collected my $200 from the bank, and then like doubled my Bitcoin. And I was like, okay. And so that was
Damn
like,
it,
well,
Ramsey.
yeah, right. So it was like, well, I need to learn more. And so I signed up for Matthew Cratter's Bitcoin University, and that course is phenomenal, man. He just lays it all out. Lays out like how to set up a node, how to self-custody, how to multi-sig, like how to buy. I mean, just lays it all out for you. And it's, I think it's like $70 for a month. And after listening to him, I was like, yeah, I get it. Okay, it makes sense. Like the penny finally dropped, And then and that was where it just came to, educating the union. And then for my union, it was like, I was thinking about, I was talking to some guys in the space, and I talked to a guy with Unchained. He introduced me to Dom via email. Kind of got a feel for what Proof of Workforce was doing. And then I had to like kind of fast track my learning into the fire service and into unions. I didn't understand them at all. So I went to our state union meeting with our union president, started figuring stuff out. And that was when, like, at our state union meeting, they kind of asked for everybody's financials for the year. And we just hadn't done ours for like 10 years. We were way behind. So it was like, all right, perfect. Like, let me swallow this frog and eat this turd sandwich for the union. And then maybe when I turn around, I'm like, we should buy Bitcoin. Maybe like, well, all right, we'll listen to the lunatic because he helped us out. So I caught up 10 years worth of books. Got them set off to the accountant, like, so we had lost our nonprofit status, like everything. So got everything kind of caught up and just got our union back up to par. And then was like, look, I'm gonna do all this and I don't want anything for it, but I just want us to listen to this guy about why this might be, an avenue to consider. And so yeah, we had Dom present and opened it up to my district, not just my local union. Had a couple guys jump on, and then yeah, just presented it, and yeah, we went for it. And it's cool. It's cool because we're a small department. We get our ass kicked a lot. We're way behind the times. We're pretty slow to adopt new ideas, new concepts, and so this is pretty neat for Blackfoot to just be like a total trailblazer in this space. Makes me laugh. This is probably the last department you'd think in Idaho to like adopt Bitcoin.
Y'all
It's
are,
awesome going for it.
hey, they can never rewrite that book. And again, right, having you guys on here is so cool because, you know, like you are the frontier of unions, Bitcoin and unions for the country, for the US. And I wanted to check in with everyone just to kind of I wanted to ask you guys about two things in particular. Number one, how is it going at your organizations? What kind of like impacts have you seen the adoption of Bitcoin, lead to, and how are guys' mindset? How are they adopting it? What are thoughts on it? But then number two, it's no accident that you guys know, like I reach out and talk to unions of all types, but yet the first 5 unions in the United States are firefighters unions. And so I understand I have a firefighters background and it's just like it's a lot easier to hear from another firefighter union about what's going on with Bitcoin and what we did. But what do you guys think it is that makes firefighters really like they just get Bitcoin? I feel like our group really embraces it and its values and totally get it. So I wanted to just like jump in wherever, but see where the impacts were since you guys have adopted, and also this kind of phenomenon about firefighters really getting Bitcoin and embracing it.
I'll take a stab at it. I think as a firefighter, your main job, you have 2 main jobs, and one is to provide security, to take a chaotic situation and make it secure. And then the second one is to mitigate risk. And so it's like, there's this whole prevention side of things where you're trying to mitigate risk, educate people on, fire alarms and having an exit strategy and what to do in case of a fire. And then there's this whole, when the fire does take off, you got to go in and provide security. And it's not far outside of what happens to you, as a father, or as a friend or a husband or a son. Like the same happens with your financial side of things. You have to try to provide some security, and then you have to mitigate the risk. And the risk that we're all facing right now is inflation, is just absolutely destroying the dollar. It's tanking into oblivion. And to try to mitigate the risk and provide some security, the answer has been, well, if you take all your money and you invest it in a whole bunch of different companies, knowing that 90% of them are probably going to tank, but maybe the 10% that make it are going to make up for it. And we'll call that the S&P 500, and then just fingers crossed that keeps up with the inflation rate and that you can provide some security in the future. We're slowly starting to see with like the 2008 crash that we might not make it, that it might not be enough. And so something else has to change on a fundamental basic level. And I think that's where Bitcoin starts to speak to people. And I think that's where, like, coming from the union perspective, why firefighters get it is it's like, hey, what if we all collectively go in together and we just risk our money together in Bitcoin and see what it does, and then maybe that creates some individual adoption. But we can all carry this burden on our shoulders as a collective and as a whole, and then it doesn't sting so bad, watching the waves rock the ship. We're all in it together at that point, and then it gives you that confidence to kind of start to invest on your own.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love that analogy of kind of like it's funny because Bitcoin is almost, I always think sometimes it's like the SCBA of the finance world. You know what I mean? It's your go-to self-contained breathing apparatus that if you check out your equipment and you do, your due diligence and learn how to use it and be safe with it, it's going to keep you safe in the IDLH environment, right? And inside of a fire. And there's a crazy parallel there. So yeah, that's really interesting.
I mean, we're all, as firefighters, we're all about mitigating the risk, right? Yeah, that makes sense. And the the asymmetry of Bitcoin, where it is, in my mind, the least risky asset to own, full stop, and the asymmetry of that, where the rest of the world, 95% of the world, thinks that it's the riskiest, and it trades like the riskiest asset in the world. And so, understanding, you want to mitigate your risk, and like, so for me, just going swinging full Bitcoin standard, it's like everything is cheaper denominated in Bitcoin over a 5-year period. Everything is cheaper. My life has gotten cheaper. I'm surrounded by people who, at the firehouse where they're struggling. You can't, we have, 35-year-old firefighters that have to have roommates to have a house to try to save some money. They can't own a home, and there's a lot of people struggling. And this is potentially, one way to mitigate that exposure and risk to the system. And it's really hard for people to see. It's hard for everyone to see because it takes time. But I think if the union can dip their toe in and see, whoa, like this nominal value that we've in quote unquote invested has actually been the best performing, asset for us over this last year. you know Maybe we should, investigate a little further. So that's kind of where we're at with our union and leaving the union. I was the union treasurer, so I could have some a little poll and kind of get people together, and felt like personally our union's primed for a DCA for sure. um, and they're all talking about it, and I've got, of a 50-person union, we've got close to probably 10 folks that are probably, maybe a little less, but probably DCAing themselves. So um, and really kind of diving deep and starting to, like, you know see the orange light.
Yeah, it's crazy how, I don't know if you guys experienced it, but like the jokes always kind of, there was a lot of optimism and a lot of people with the get off zero of like just getting into Bitcoin, dipping the toe, that they were all in and out of the gate. But of course, there's some naysayers, and the jokes flew and they still continue to fly. But the jokes now are more funny, unlike, like the for us, right? We've outperformed interest on the
Yeah,
reserve account for the next 30 years. Like
yeah,
if we do nothing, we are keeping up with inflation for, a couple of decades. And so the jokes now, there's still some folks that joke around like, oh, what are we going to, Bitcoin, huh? And you go like, but everyone there, we have a lot of Bitcoiners and a lot of people are believers now, and a ton of people are interested in it themselves. I mean, their kids, I don't know about you guys, but I have some folks that are like, my kid holds Bitcoin and they're like a financial monster now. And this is like, a teenage kid that's like, oh, he's looking at his own companies. My kid is very financially savvy about like getting reports on inflation and
Yeah.
breaking down where it's real or not. And you're like, wow. I mean, when I was 15, I was um, as dumb as they get, clueless about that kind of stuff.
yeah.
Matt,
I
what?
I have fully orange pilled twin 14-year-old daughters, so they're going to school selling cookies, converting it to Bitcoin, and they're collecting allowance in
Dude,
Bitcoin, and they're in,
I love hearing that, Hank.
it's
That's so
pretty
awesome.
cool. They're telling their teachers, you should be buying Bitcoin. It's an eighth grade teacher.
It's
Oh
So
yeah,
great.
that's a
That's so
proud
awesome.
papa moment.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
no, that's so epic. That's that's the thing I think a lot of people don't realize is, especially with us as firefighters, like we don't just we care about the people around us a lot, and so when we find something good, we're going to bring it to them. So hearing people bring it, whether it's to like their church groups, their clubs they're a part of, that's why I think it's so powerful when you have like a firefighters union that embraces Bitcoin, even if it's just a tiny little step. It just opens the door for the education.
Yeah,
What about on the East Coast, Pat? What,
yeah,
are they coming around or what?
yeah,
Are they seeing the light?
yeah. Dom, everyone here's a firefighter, so there's a lot of darkness around the job. You see a lot of bad stuff. So to get a win, like a team win, everyone jumps in together. And you said something that I think helped sway some of the union members in Taunton was, you know, some guys wanted to jump in hard, like big time gamblers. They wanted to jump in with a heavy amount of money, and I said, hey, that's going to put you in an emotional state. You're going to be, can be volatile at times, and if you put a lot of money down at the beginning, you're going to react, you know, with fear, and you're going to sell, and you're going to regret it. Why don't we go in small and with the learning mode of the brain, And I think that was something that you told me very early on when we met. Try to get these guys to go in, a little bit, so they are in the learning frame of mind, and that's exactly what we did. And sure enough, a couple months later, the hand went up at the union meeting, and they voted to put more. And now the talk is dollar cost average, and that will pass easily in the next month or two. We're going to set up a fully automated system through River, so that when the money goes in, hits a predefined amount of money, it gets sent out of River into our cold wallet. So it's all automated once we set it up. That's what they like. Guys, we're talking about why do firefighters seem to jump on it, and I've observed this. Firefighters are like hackers, like they always try to find a way to make it easier, work smarter, not harder type of thing, and they're always trying to game the system and, a better way of doing it. Everyone's got their expert opinions on things, and firefighters are also hustlers. Where our shift is 24-hour shifts. We work 24 hours, 24 off, 24 on, and then we have 5 days off. So that's why everyone has another job. A lot of real estate guys, a lot of small business owners, and they're hustling and they're hustling. They're trying to make that money to have a better life. And they quickly figure out that everything's just getting more and more expensive. They can't make enough money. They can't work that many hours. So there was some hesitancy about Bitcoin, the magic internet money, but constant talking and showing websites and clips and articles and X spaces, if you keep hearing the same thing, you start getting curious. And I led by example. I was pretty much open about what I was doing. Some people called me crazy. Some people jumped on. And yeah, it's all been good. There's a lot of excitement in Taunton. There's a lot of excitement. And part of that is trying to temper it down a little bit, approach this with an analytical mind and not just jump in really hard emotionally, Yeah, so I'm excited about it. I'm excited for them,
Yeah, you got to separate the emotion. I remember telling some of you guys when we were talking, for us, Santa Monica, the Monday after we became the first union to self-custody Bitcoin, the SEC sued Coinbase and Binance. Pretty big deal.
Yeah,
Not something right coming out of a approval, but because we had educated the guys and we used the survey and they voted on it and we kind of like got it approved. They came in that morning into the firehouse, and this is some of my favorite now, just between us. I don't know about you guys, because they know you as the Bitcoiners. I can't even pour the coffee before I get hit with the questions. Like I'm standing at the coffee machine, and it's like I look to my left, and there's a face like this close, and it's like, "Hey, bro, I don't know if the miners are gonna survive this halving thing." And I'm like, "Dude, what have you been listening to? Like, what are you talking about?" But I love it. But these guys came in Monday, and the first person to come up to me after this, thing happened, where usually you expect people fear mongering and saying we got to get out of this thing. The first thing they said was, "Hey, Dom, I think if I read the initiative right, this has nothing to do with us because we have our Bitcoin in self-custody, right? And I go, wow, here we are, dude. Like what an amazing way to come in the morning instead of the, God forbid, if we had put like half of our funds in, people would be freaking out and they'd be like, we got to get, so you overcome the obstacles in Bitcoin by separating the emotion and, just being able to get hit a little bit and roll with the punches and just kind of like keep moving forward and learning. So that's a really, I think it's interesting looking at this strategic reserve stuff at the state level, because I think that they've bypassed a ton of bottom up adoption. And so the real question is if the states get this approved and something happens like we see in cycles where Bitcoin takes a hit, when states look behind them, who's carrying the torch? I know in Massachusetts, Taunton's there, and they're going to be like, guys, don't worry, we're good. Humboldt and Vacaville in California and Santa Monica will be like, we're good. Skyler in Idaho. But again, it's not easy spending a long time in this market. It's getting easier, but it's not easy. It's still not easy.
Right after we bought, it was like 105. And then it just tanked down to what, like 91, 92. Like right, and I knew it would happen. I was like, it doesn't matter. It's just Murphy's law. And then I was like, but this is it, this is how it works. I mean, it's trending up, and everyone's like, it's tanking. I was like, man, it's a 6%. Like it's nothing, man. It could come back 12% in 48 hours. Like it's 6% is nothing on this ride. And sure enough, it did. It dropped to 91 and jumped right back up above 100. I think it's floating around 99 right now. So it was nothing, but yeah.
I was on the.
One of the comebacks I always do for that, Skyler, is that, like, hey, that's pretty impressive. You just told me it went down $1,000, and I'll open up an app and say, any 8-year-old kid can say it went down $1,000. Tell me why. Yeah. And then, sure enough, that same person, I'll walk into the kitchen and say, hey, did you see that Bitcoin is up $5,000? And he looks at his phone. He's like, huh? I was like, yeah, that's real simple. I just told you it went up $5,000. Tell me why. And then that gets them thinking, why? Why does it go up and down? Because that's much more important than any 8-year-old can look at like a Robinhood app and say, hey, look, it went down $5,000.
But I was trying to educate one of my guys.
One thing I always
right? Dollar.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to piggyback off that. It's like I try to, as one of the money mantras of just like, chipping away at people's barriers. It's like, hey, the price is the least interesting thing about Bitcoin, right? We all know that phrase or whatever. Yeah. So it's like very similar to kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
I say that phrase, Alex, but then when I'm on the plane back from El Salvador with no Wi-Fi and we land, I'm like, let's see here real quick.
Yeah, where is it at?
I'm the king. I always tell people price doesn't matter. And I think I have my price checks down to somewhere between 1,100 and 1,200 checks per day, which is down from 5,000. So I'm making huge strides. And then someone will bring it up and I'm like, hey dude, price doesn't matter. Like get off the price thing. I go, and I'm like, excuse me real quick. I'm just checking my text real quick.
I'm guilty of this thing, but we can handle it.
It's
we know
more,
what's going on.
Yeah. It's more for fun. I always say it's one thing to, watch the price action from a state of fun. It's a whole nother thing to do it as a trader, thinking that you have any chance. Pat, you brought up like the tell me why. And we talked about this, and I was talking to Alemo on our little pod, but it's getting harder to pinpoint the exact thing you mentioned, Pat, of like, tell me why Bitcoin moved. We're talking about a $2 trillion market that has inputs running 24/7 from all over the world. And yeah, you can go, it was Trump's tariffs that did this, but really you don't, unless you're measuring the metrics of the volume, the trading volume, buys, it's really hard to just pinpoint something to say like this by itself moved Bitcoin one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's more of a trick question to get them thinking about the fundamentals. There's a lot of noise, like you said, there's a lot of inputs into this equation, a lot of things that you'll never be able to discover, but the fundamental is the same. This giant payment network, global, a lot of access to it, a lot of people haven't been onboarded yet. So early, big global market, 24/7. So there's so much input going in there, And if you start down that journey to try to figure out why does Bitcoin go up, I think everyone's going to come to the same answer. It's because the money's going down, and that I think that's a leading question, almost like a rhetorical question for people. Why? Tell me
I
why.
heard something, and it kind of like reminded me of the price action. Why the price action is so unique? It's because Bitcoin's a commodity, right? It's, all the holders are holding and not looking at the price, and the people buying and selling it's priced at the margin. So it's being bought and sold by people that don't understand it every day, right? And so you have people on the margin setting the price, and that's why it's so volatile. We think it's worth seven figures or more, and the person that's buying and selling every day thinks it's at whatever price it is today. So yeah, I think just understanding that, like, it could get more volatile. Like, it seems like it's trending to less volatile, but what if it goes Weimar, hyperinflate? Like, if you look at the Weimar chart, everyone thinks they're rich in Germany because the
Yeah.
chart is so volatile. And so, like, I mean, that's a possibility, but is it a reality? What's the percentage probability of that? I don't know, but
Yeah. I'm going to use another fire metaphor, but we talk about flashovers a lot and the perfect mixture, right? Of like, the fire tetrahedron and what's needed for something to ignite. And with Bitcoin, it's so interesting. January, it was just a year ago that we had the ETFs approved, and that kicked off what everyone kind of agreed upon as the beginning of the institutional cycle. We have not seen pension funds or large institutions ape in that past year. They're slowly starting to get in. Wisconsin took a decent step in. Michigan put their little pinky toe in. You're starting to see bills come out. Now you have this whole other factor by the new administration where there's discussion at the United States level. And that should, I think everyone kind of thought that's like next cycle. Nation state is next cycle. That's probably won't happen. It doesn't make sense chronologically that nation state adoption will precede institutional adoption, right? Because cities make up states, states and institutions make up the country. So it's leapfrogging. But with that now on the table, you want to talk about volatility on the upside. If you do have a nation state global race to accumulate the scarce asset that is Bitcoin, meanwhile, as institutions finally go, wait, well, we have to get in this race too. You're talking about large ships. You're not talking about me and you smash buying Bitcoin or even Sailor. Sailor will seem like a little guppy compared to sovereign wealth funds, huge pension funds, nation states, literally smash buying dips. That's something that would just be, and so I don't know. We'll see. I think I'm not saying that the nation state cycle has kicked off, but it's definitely being discussed and entertained given the new administration's kind of stance on Bitcoin, and unfortunately other digital assets. Okay, that's a question. How are you guys navigating the shit coinery that comes up? I got hit up the other day. There's a guy, I could see the wheels moving faster than the processor, and he's like, "Hey man, there's this Web3. Don't sleep on Web3. I know you're on Bitcoin." And I go, my man, you got to catch up with this cycle. That was last cycle. At least bring like meme coins or some new idea.
I'm a
But how do you
Melania.
guys?
I'm a
Yeah.
Melania coin. I'm a Melania coin maxi, bro.
There you go.
Melania going
How do you? How do
maxi.
you? How do you?
I'm gonna make you a
Have you
T-shirt
guys?
that says that.
How do you guys navigate that? Have you seen a lot of it, and how do you keep guys focused on the main thing that is going to protect their time and energy? That's Bitcoin.
I'll take a stab at it first if you guys are good at that.
Yeah.
Um, One of the first places I try to focus on, because what I've learned is I'm fucking passionate. I'm like, I want to teach you everything I know. This is amazing. It's going to change your whole life. Like this is what, what I've realized, like people don't like that kind of energy when it comes to money or finance and Bitcoin in particular. It's like immediately
They get
people's
scared.
guard goes up, right? So I'm trying to find ways to like build my own reflex of framing things in a way that lowers those boundaries or whatever. One of them in this case would be I try to say, like, look, there's only one cryptocurrency that is good money. That doesn't mean that all these other cryptos, Ethereum, Solana, Cardano, XRP, everybody's asking me about XRP, and it's like, I just try to put them like, instead of debate good, bad, or whatever, it's like, these aren't currencies. They're technologies. They provide value like a software program provides value. Some of them are fantastic, and whatever. They're going to provide a lot of value for a lot of people, but but it's important to understand just the distinction. And I have found that explanation seems to resonate with people. Like, they don't understand shit about money. They definitely don't understand anything about Bitcoin, and they're trying to, or they want, people have that innate, especially firemen, they have this innate, like, well, I heard this and I'm ready, we're already down the road of I know what's going on, when really, well, maybe we haven't unpacked it properly. And so when all my brothers are coming to me saying, hey, what about XRP and Cardano, I find that just quickly saying, like, look, there's nothing bad or good about it. It's just they're two totally different things. One is the best currency of all time, or it is a currency, and we could debate how good or bad it is. And the others are not currencies; they're just software programs. You know what I mean? I think people sort of get that. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think drawing the distinctions are pivotal, and I think that's a good, that's definitely approach when someone is. It's always easier to meet someone where they are than tell them everything they know is wrong. And so sometimes where I say, I get a little more harsh sometimes, and I tell them you are literally playing with fire, no pun intended. But you know, I like telling people, what do you know about this thing that you hold? Who are the founders? How is it launched? Who holds the majority of the supply? How does the consensus mechanism work if there is one? What's standing between you getting dumped on and this project being over? If you can't answer those questions because you don't understand the facets, go back to learning Bitcoin and drop all this other stuff you're worried about, because you're playing in dangerous territory.
I think this cycle, it's becoming clear. Like, watched a podcast with Corey Clipston. It's like it's becoming clear that, like, we have Bitcoin, which is sound money and being treated like that, and then we have gambling, and there's a space, there's a market for both. So as long as people understand that they're gambling, you know, and that's what that is, and you can delineate the difference between Bitcoin and crypto, then go for it, gamble all you want. But we're going to be, there's savers in the world and there's gamblers in the world, and you can do both, that's fine too. But
It's tough.
it's the difference. It just comes down to kind of it's one or the other at this point. So and I think this cycle with the ETFs, like the Ethereum ETFs, have just been basically non-existent compared to what Bitcoin's done in the last 13 months, 12 months. So I think the big boys are clearly seeing the difference, and it's just a matter of everyone else to kind of like catch on. But the writing's on the wall for just this to degenerate again. We're going to have another cycle of just gambling because everyone wants to do that. Everyone wants to get rich quick. No one wants to just save money. That's so boring. But
Yeah.
as a union, it's so perfect. It's a perfect combination because you want boring and you want that. So,
It's crazy that we may have come to a period where Bitcoin is boring for a union. I hope that we can get there. And you mentioned this I found very few people can be gamblers and long-term holder savers simultaneously. Maybe some people can, but to me, the wavelengths are incompatible, because on one time you're making long-term sacrifice, hard work, slow and steady, and the other one, you get this like addiction to this quick luster, this quick buck, and it's almost like saying, like, I'm gonna go to a classical Mozart concert while bumping, System of a Down heavy metal in my earphones, and I'm gonna have an enjoyable, mellow experience. And um, it's tough. Was why I tell people like, don't even roll that way. And you see people that normally I wouldn't associate as gamblers being like, hey, is this Trump coin thing worth like I think it, and you're like, whoa, dude, you realize you're gambling a scratcher ticket at best. Um,
Talk to a baby.
like yeah, you're talking about a lottery ticket. Would you ever come to me and go, "Hey man, what do you think? Like, I don't know. I'm thinking like 500 in lottery tickets. Like, do you think would you ever ask me that question?" No, because you literally have a one in a billions of chances. Um, and so
The
it's
the
hard for people.
Yeah, sorry. The other thing is the diversification. Everyone wants to diversify, and that's a classic mistake that, I made when I first came into the space. Oh, if you got Bitcoin, okay, we got that, but we need to diversify, and that's a hard thing for people to wrap their head around. Like, you don't diversify, like, what is say so they say you don't diversify in the chair you're sitting, you have one chair, it works, right? So we have one form of sound money digitally that works. And so why are we diversifying? It's like this Zen moment when you realize, like, the last thing I need to do is, like, diversify, and one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin, and all you got to do is stack sats. It's so simple.
It's funny how that word diversify is it's something that's taught in
Yeah.
college. It's taught by your parents and your economics people, like diversification. Every RIA, every investment person out there, diversify, diversify. These bonds will help you weather the tough times. You basically tell me to buy losers. You're basically telling me to buy losers,
Well,
and I just had this conversation with my retirement guy because I'm on the chopping block of retirement. I actually today spoke to a retirement guy, and I was rolling my eyes, and he thinks I was the cockiest prick out there because I was just rolling my eyes. He was trying to get me to go 60-40. He's like, you're getting up there in age, why don't you protect it? Why don't you go with these bonds? And I was rolling my eyes, and that word diversified, man. If you got the winner, just saving the winner.
Yeah, well, the clear difference is people are like diversify by buying this stock and that stock. And it's like the only version of
They're all
diversification that
stocks.
actually
Yeah,
works is one that's
yeah,
outside of a different asset class. And there's only five of them. So
correct.
there's, it's like
Yeah,
a classic, but not a
yeah,
lot of people understand that. So that's another thing I try to
yeah.
explain. Same thing, Pat, is like if it's not like buying other cryptos is helping you, all that's doing is that's just lazy and disconnected from reality, and we're just trying stuff. We're gambling,
We
literally gambling.
yeah,
If you want to offset your risk, well, you have a lot of work to do. And if 60-40 portfolio is also kind of lazy. It's just like, yeah, statistically speaking, it might help you offset risk, but it ain't diversification. Those are very different principles.
yeah.
And so I
And,
always
and
try
and
to.
Hank, we've all been there, Hank. I went down that same road too, and it just comes back. It's funny to hear it because we all have very similar stories in the same thought process. It's just
Yeah.
time. It's just time. You see these cycles go by, a few cycles go by, we all end up in the same place. You know, just rational
What do
Yeah,
thought.
you
if you survive a cycle, you need to denominate in Bitcoin.
Yeah,
It's very
yeah,
clear
uh huh,
what's going on.
But
yep.
so
I think diversification. Sorry, Dom, but
no no go for it.
I think diversification is super important when your investment strategy is wholly dependent on people, because people are super complex, right? So if you're the CEO of some company and the company's rocking and rolling and you're giving your all into that company, but then all of a sudden, your kid gets sick and you're going through divorce and your world starts to crumble in, and then all of a sudden the company starts to crumble, right? And that's the thing that I try to explain to guys is it's like you can play with meme coins, and I'm not saying they're good or bad, but they're wholly dependent on typically a CEO and a board of trustees, and we're just hoping that those are good guys, that those guys are going to look out for everyone's best interest, and we're hoping that they don't get influenced by big pharma money, or that they don't get influenced by, we're fingers crossed that the founder of Ethereum doesn't get involved in something that becomes a rug pull or whatever it is. We're like Bitcoin, like Satoshi built it and then he walked away and now it's gone, and it's wholly dependent on all of the nodes operating the system. There's not going to be more, there's not going to be less, because nobody's at the helm. It's money in the hands of the people. And so if there's no CEO, like, I don't have the time to sit and study who the board of trustees are for ADA. Like, I don't have the time, the mental capacity to try to figure out if these are good guys
And
that
you
I
don't
want
have
to
the inside
trust
info
with.
either.
Yeah,
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And neither does ChatGPT because I tried. So like,
yeah.
why don't I just
It's
buy the thing that's there that nobody's messing with, that I can just set it and forget it? And I think these other ones they'll be American Express and Discovery and Visa. Like they'll figure out some way to maintain profitability because it's not going to be offering sound money. They're going to find some other way to maintain profitability. But with Bitcoin, there's no profit. It's pretty straight. You buy the Bitcoin, you hold the Bitcoin. I mean, it's not you don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about Satoshi rolling out of bed one day and being like, ah, man, I've had a bad
yeah,
day. Let me.
it's funny, Skyler. I just keep laughing right here, hearing you talk about that. You guys all see that meme of Vitaly Buterin and saying like, I've invested all my money in this guy, and there's some sort of weird picture of him in line. You guys see that meme? Like, all my
Yeah.
net worth is behind this guy right here. And it's just like this weird, kind of strange looking meme picture. I mean, it's funny, like some of these other altcoins, they do have people who have influence over that quote unquote stock. They
Yeah.
catch a bad, you know, lawsuit, something bad happens, they say something crazy, they get caught with their pants down somewhere. What happens to
Or
that stock? It's gone. That
it could
coin's
be an
gone.
external source, right? Because how many
Yeah,
people tell you, why would I ever invest in Bitcoin if I can do Nvidia, right? Okay, well here comes DeepSeek,
yeah,
and it's not even Nvidia's fault, and they
yeah.
did nothing. Nothing changed about their trajectory or what they're working on, other than some other company coming in. Boom. So, um, yeah, like third party risk is everywhere,
Third
and this
party
comes up a
risk.
lot in self custody versus custodians. Bitcoin was made to eliminate third party risk and put your
Yep.
own financial future in your hands, and so that's what makes it such a powerful tool. I want to talk about one thing real quick, and that's like the future of firefighting and retirement. And so a couple of key parts where, when I first started writing about Bitcoin and workers and unions, one of the things that came up that I found super interesting, and I don't know if we've talked about this or not, but in college I studied the samurai a lot. And I always found a lot of interesting parallels between the samurai and the firefighters, right? Because the samurai was this like elite class of working class individual in feudal Japan. They had armor, they had code, values, they were extremely well respected in Japan. They they were in all the high courts. They were like the highest of high as far as the working like class is concerned. And then they disappeared. And the reason they disappeared was because um, isolationist Japan opened its doors, and all of a sudden they were staring down the barrel of a Gatling gun, and they were no longer relevant. Now, I don't think that unions, the firefighter unions, there's a lot of parallels there, but I think there are other unions that are staring down the barrel of irrelevancy, especially in the realm of automation. And here, unlike the Japanese, they have the internet at their disposal to find things like Bitcoin and to start taking advantage of whatever time they have left to stack. How do you see Bitcoin continuing to play a role with the unions? How do you see pension funds continuing out these next couple of years? And what do you think it looks like if pension funds can't figure it out and they're struggling more and making folks retire later and put more money into the pensions? Like, give me your thoughts on just, I know it's a lot there, but just, anything along those lines.
Well, I mean, I don't understand the pension super well yet. I'm still learning. Um, but I think the primary thing that Bitcoin's going to do is there was a similar thing. There was a grassroots movement that happened years ago, and it was a grassroots movement to try to push like rural counties to um, put building codes in place for single family residential structures to have some sort of suppression put into the home. And it wasn't like to suppress the home, but it was to aid in evacuation. So it'd be like by the door, maybe in some key areas to exit. And in Idaho specifically was a state where a lot of the general contractors kind of got together and they went and petitioned to be like, nope, you can't have these grassroots movements in Idaho. We're not putting up with this. You can't come in and tell us how to build homes. And it kind of kiboshed the whole deal. And with Bitcoin, it's a similar thing, right? Like it's this grassroots movement of, hey, here at the local level, we can adopt a currency and we can take that back to our district, take that back to our state, and be like, hey man, we just wrote out a cycle. We just wrote out a 4-year cycle, and we risked so little, and we had so much to gain, and now we're willing to risk a little bit more. And so here's this boat that we can jump on, and you don't have to have the battleship out the gate like Blackfoot in terms of Bitcoin. It's a very modest, it's a raft. We put a dinghy out into the water, and a couple of us jumped onto it to see what it's going to do. But I think that's the thing, is it's a grassroots movement that you can start small with Bitcoin on a very small level. And depending on, what your union looks like, firefighter unions are unique because we go, local, district, state, international. So it's a really big conglomerate. But by starting small, you can do the work to at least show up on a larger scale with your union body and just say, hey man, here's what we did. We started off small. Here's what it did for us. We doubled or tripled, or 30 years of income. We pulled that off in 6 months, a year, and 4-year cycle. And then ultimately that's what it all boils down to, right? Like I don't know about you guys, but it seems like union dues just keep going up. They just keep going up, and they just keep going up, and it's getting tight. And the last state meeting I was at, there was a handful of people that are like, dude, we can't keep raising dues, man. Like, guys are hurting. We're struggling. And so it's like, well, then what could we do as a union? Well, maybe we can stop watching our dollar dissolve and get it into something that has a little bit more substance.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned small amounts, and I always say in the next 10, 20, 30 years, everyone's talking about the race to accumulate. But I say the real winners will be those that can hold on to what they have, right? Because show me 2 unions. One of them does a very small amount, proof of work. They educate their members. They teach them about Bitcoin, the network, and what it means. And they teach them that this isn't for us to get rich. This is for 30 years for the next generation of firefighters, that we can hand them something of value to say, look, we weren't geniuses. We didn't but we just tried to do something, and here's this, and may the next 30 years of the organization treat you as well as it treated us. Now show me another union that doesn't take those steps, and they go, we're going to ape in 100K. We're going to be able to get, in 30 years, they may have more Bitcoin, but they won't be able to hold on to it. There's going to be too much pressure to get rid of it, dump it, sell it, take the quick gains, not see the full picture. So therefore, in those 2 races, the tortoise wins. It's 30 years, that small amount of Bitcoin, we're going to look at that and go, holy shit, that's incredibly rare that you guys had that and held on to it. And that's like the challenge I think that we're facing in doing it right. And like many of you pointed out, and Pat talked about, not trying to hit that home run. I tell unions now before a phone call, sometimes they go, I'm going to present this about how Bitcoin's this, and this. And I say, hey, you don't need to convince your union that Bitcoin is the future. You only need to convince them that it is a future worth looking into. Very different, very easy. Like selling a house. If I tell Hank, come look at this house and you're going to buy it at the end of this transaction, he's going to be like, fucking, whoa. But if I go, Hank, just come look at this house. You don't have to buy it. Just see. It's like, yeah, it's nothing for me to look into this. So that's going to be huge as far as holding that for the long run.
I think, guys, the unions buying Bitcoin, believe it or not, is probably a lot easier sell than the pension funds of the states. I mean, we're firefighters from 3 different states here, probably vastly different situations with our pension fund. So I think that's the big one, because we've all seen what's happened in the past couple weeks with the new president, how fast things can change. So to overly rely on a pension, if I was a young firefighter, 25 years old, 1 or 2 years on the job, I couldn't even give that guy a percentage of whether he's going to have a pension. I mean, I don't think that's hyperbole, because we've seen how quickly things can change. Social Security, the windfall protection in Massachusetts, I don't know if this affects you guys, but that just got voted in that I'm now eligible to receive Social Security now. For years, that was a no way am I going to get Social Security, and I accepted that, because I have a pension instead. Well, now the political climate, they voted it in, so I'm looking at a Social Security check at 62 at the earliest. So Bitcoin can kind of be like a little ace in the hole here for these guys, for the pension, and I hope the pension funds do that, because you're right, Skyler, pension funds are very complicated. I mean, you have to study that for a long time. Bitcoin seems pretty easy to me compared to pension funds, figuring out what the hell's going on there. And there's 50 different ones. So, yeah, unions, I think, is a lot easier sell to get them to buy Bitcoin. Pension funds, I don't know. I hope. I hope they'll start to have a strategic reserve. They'll adopt that.
Alex, what were you going to say?
Sorry, Alex.
A couple things. One, pension funds already own Bitcoin without people understanding. I'm a nerd, and I'll go on occasionally to CalPER's website. I'm like, hey, I want to, they at one point, I don't. They're obviously constantly investing, divesting. At one point, they owned a bunch of Bitcoin mining company, like a significant amount of
They had
shares.
Riot. They had Riot and sold, and
Bingo.
they own Marathon right now.
So like in one way, they already are aware, they're interested, they understand, and I think this is my conjecture. I think that they're not risk averse, as in they don't want to take risk investment wise. I think they're risk averse more so with the perception of risk. So if society perceives Bitcoin to be risky, then they're not going to just come outward publicly and do it. So it kind of what I wanted to say was that other than regulatory environment, which could dramatically change things in like a week, not even overnight, we could have some really fun, insane things happen with this administration. But regardless of how that plays out, I think that it kind of piggybacks off what Skyler was saying, and even you, Dom, is like, there's a grassroots movement that is inevitable. It's happening. It's starting with us five, and sort of like you're the captain of it, right, Dom? And you're not slowing down, and we're not slowing down, and it's going to be this exponential spread of education and understanding and interest and engagement and effectively then cold ownership, right? So then all of a sudden you've got constituents. You've got your public, every one of the pensioners like myself who are paying into and getting the promise of pension, who now perceive the one thing that they want to offset risk to be Bitcoin. Then I think you're going to start seeing CalPERS and all these big pension companies go, yeah, well, we've been wanting to do it all along. We just have to either wait for you to be ready or wait for the regulatory environment or both. And I'm notorious for being the classically overly optimistic entrepreneur. I think we can do anything we put our minds to, all this kind of crazy stuff. And so I have to check myself with Bitcoin because it's easy to get like, we're all similar minded and we all feel the same way about Bitcoin. And so it's easy to be like, oh yeah, it's inevitable. I don't really know if anything's inevitable, but it feels like the same adoption curve as the internet itself. Like it is happening. And with more of these kind of things, the only other thing that I was going to say, which kind of ties into my point, is one thing that I try to do instead of explain Bitcoin or money or whatever is back way up. And like I've helped negotiate the last 3 or 4 contracts for our local. And, what are we negotiating for? We're negotiating for pay, benefits, and working conditions. And I'm trying to argue to people that there's actually 4 pillars of what we are trying to accomplish as a union. And the 4th pillar is financial literacy. Like if I did my job as best I could and I go negotiate the best contract in the country, it's only as good as the 4th pillar. If no one knows what to do with all this money, pay, benefits, working conditions, then what good is any of this, right? So I'm trying to frame it to people like that. And the more that, no matter how you describe it, or no matter how, I think we're all doing similar things with our groups to try and get them to have the one skill set of financial literacy and using the package that they have currently. It's expanding at this exponential rate through all of our members, and I just feel like once that continues to grow, which it will, and then the Bitcoin understanding of its value to people and to society, everything starts to grow, and then the regulatory environment, all these things kind of, it's going to go from where it is to where we all know it's going, right? And so anyway, that's just kind of my thought on that.
No, I love the fourth pillar, dude. I love that, because you're absolutely correct. As a union, you can chase raises to keep up inflation all day long, but if we're always going to be chasing, and these guys and
Yep.
gals of, the union don't know how to take advantage of this situation where they're getting pay that's keeping up with inflation, they're just going to always be chasing, and it's never
Yep.
going to be enough. And what, we already know, the 222 used to be the gold standard of a contract. You get a 2% raise each year, keeps up with inflation. You get some other gimmies in the background, and we did great. You bring a 222 right now to a union, you're getting crucified,
Yeah.
legitimately torched.
Yeah.
If I were to go into a union and go, guys, I got us a 3-year contract, 2% each year, they'd be like, get him out of here right now. So that tells you something, that, hey, the situation has changed, the dynamics have changed, and they have to figure out, if the system has cracks and cities are going to be always chasing inflation, unfunded liabilities, and they just can't keep up, because guess what? Newsflash, their cities in California are not allowed to hold Bitcoin. They're prohibited by the
Yeah.
investment guidelines. They can't even hold an ETF. They here, swallow your bonds and be a good little boy and girl, and take your bonds, and good luck, and generate revenue. And um, so yeah, like, I think that's an amazing point. And another thing, when you talked about the pensions, that makes a lot of sense too. Because yeah, they have a lot of career risk. But I will say this about the pensions: if they can't keep up, imagine in 5 years or so, CalPERS creating a third tier, and these new firefighters are like, hey,
Nuts.
they're like, Hank just retired, Alex retired, Skyler's gone, Dom's gone. Now they're telling me I have to work an extra 5 years. What the hell is going on? Because I'm seeing firefighters figure it out with Bitcoin real easily. And my pension is telling me, congratulations on life expectancy. You just got an extra 5 years of the average life expectancy. We're going to tax that by making you work 5 more years. And by the way, as we know in the fire service, those last 5 years are where your greatest risk of like terminal cancer, you're very vulnerable, stroke, heart attack. We all know guys who are like a year away from retirement that kicked the bucket, because this is a young person's job at the end of the day, waking up 3 times after midnight, being super stressed out about stuff. It's a young person's job. So um, yeah, I think that's a good place to kind of tie it all in, and I think that was very incredibly placed. We got to keep rolling. Um, some stuff for proof of workforce, like you guys know, like I'm working on that newsletter to make sure that obviously any members of your organization are also members of the Proof of Workforce Association that we're kind of becoming. And so we're here to help them with like updates, how to avoid scams, things like that. Just basic bread and butter. Like, how do you navigate this gauntlet that is Bitcoin? I think in the future, it's great to be able to network with each other. I love that, like, maybe Skyler does have an idea for something in the contract, and he can call Alex and go, hey, is there any opportunity for Bitcoin here? What are you guys doing? So that's another great play. And then eventually, we will become a constituency within Bitcoin that has to be reckoned with. And so as we continue to add unions that hold Bitcoin, we're going to make sure that, I think no one's asking for, the United States to like, uh, you know, like pump our bags or go on the offensive, but at the same time, don't hold us hostage like the cities that are held hostage and can't invest in Bitcoin. Let us hold our own destiny in our hands, and don't try to cripple us from holding something of our own and being reliant on this system. So, um, tons of great stuff. Any closing stuff from you guys? I mean, this is only the beginning. I'm sure we'll have more talks, but damn.
Did being the newest union that adopted something that you said to our group when you came and presented, was you talked about your union, doing a dollar per member. Um, and we didn't do a dollar per member. We just took a chunk of our reserves and put it in. But I just, anybody that's union that's listening to this, like you don't have to throw the house at this. You can throw $100 into Bitcoin strictly as a learning mission, just to watch what it does, just to begin the process of learning and educating your guys. So if you guys are on the fence about it or thinking about it, it does not have to be some monumental amount. We're so early in this game, and so we don't have to risk a whole lot. But to not educate yourself is a fool's game.
That's right. Just like we said earlier, you don't have to convince people Bitcoin is the future, only that it is a future worth learning about. That's it. Like get off zero, learn with your members. Like Alex said, that fourth pillar, it means nothing if the financial literacy isn't there. And by the way, financial literacy from your civics class in the 90s is not financial literacy that's needed to keep up with this modern runaway money supply. I think we're at 37 trillion in debt, or is it 38? I can't keep up. But it's real. It's meaningful. So, yeah, dude. Any other last things before we wrap it up? You guys are fucking all stars. And yeah, any last points?
I just think it's exciting times that we're in right now. This is real exciting times. Next few months, next year, I'm very happy to be here and a part of it. Very happy. And yeah, just get out there, educate. It's getting easier to hear no and work through the naysayers. It doesn't even affect me anymore. Just like the price of Bitcoin doesn't really affect me anymore. But these are real crucial times, and I'm looking forward to the next few months and the next year.
Hell yeah. Well, dude, from Santa Monica to Vacaville to Taunton to Humboldt Bay to Blackfoot, Idaho, like we're here. So we'll keep rolling. Thank you guys so much for being on the call. And yeah, man, it's just great to be on this journey with you guys for sure.